You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The New York Giants have cut safety Logan Ryan in what was kind of a surprise move by the club. Hi, everybody. Patricia Traina, host of the LockedOn Giants podcast with this Giants news brief, an update for you. And earlier on Thursday, the New York Giants terminated the contract of safety Logan Ryan. Now, this is what's kind of interesting. The move that was made by the team saves them less than $800,000 and puts a big amount of dead money cap space into their 2022 salary cap. So a lot of people are wondering, why exactly did they cut Logan Ryan? What was the benefit, if not, to get salary cap space, which they desperately need? Well, I have a few thoughts on that. Number one, the Giants under Joe Schoen, the new general manager, I think have finally accepted that this team is in a rebuild. It's not a matter of, okay, we can rebuild and compete. The idea is this team, remember, went 4-13 last year. They had a lot of guys who, contributed to that record. They didn't make a difference in getting them extra wins and whatnot. And Joe Schoen, probably in going through the roster with head coach Brian Daboll, decided, you know what? Look, we lost with these guys. We can continue to lose without them. So in getting rid of guys like Logan Ryan, who was a good locker room guy, not a bad player, not a guy who was a Pro Bowler by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy who was very heavily linked into the previous coaching regime. Logan Ryan was a Joe Judge guy, and he was a locker room lieutenant for Joe Judge. So Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator, Joe Schoen, probably sat down and they said, look, number one, we're not convinced this guy is a fit for what we want to do on defense. They also probably said to themselves, look, we are in a rebuild mode. We want to get younger. We want to get more cost effective. So best we rip off the bandage now. It's not going to result in a lot of cap savings, but it is going to help our cap moving forward should we want to extend contracts. Because remember, even though Logan Ryan's going to dump about $11 million in dead money to the Giants cap this year, next year the Giants are going to be much, much healthier in terms of their salary cap. And then just in the nick of time too, because if, for example, Daniel Jones balls out and they want to re-sign him, they're going to need a lot of money in order to get him under the, to fit him in, whether it be on the franchise tag, which could very well be a possibility, or if they're going to sign him to a new deal. The Giants are also going to have to make a decision on Saquon Barkley. So they're going to need some money next year if they want to re-sign their own guys, which, by the way, is something that Joe Schoen has said that he hopes to be able to do down the line, which is retain talent that is homegrown. And that is something the Giants have not done a good enough job with. Part of that because the players just haven't been good enough. And part of that is because the Giants just haven't had money. They haven't, managed their money wisely. So in Logan Ryan, he was 32 years old, I think. The Giants probably did not see him for the long term as a fit. And rather than wait till next year where they would have saved more money, they just decided to rip the bandage off. And, it's nothing personal. As you guys know, this is a business and these types of decisions are made all the time. So what does the decision mean going forward? Well, it could mean a couple things. Number one, the only safeties with any kind of experience on the Giants roster right now are Julian Love, who, by the way, is entering the final year of his contract, and Xavier McKinney. Now, could this mean that the Giants are maybe thinking they're going to have a shot at Notre Dame safety Kyle Hamilton in the draft? It could. I mean, certainly I would think the Giants are going to want to add a safety to that group because right now, as I said, they just have the two guys in Love and McKinney who have experience. So they could potentially be looking to add a Kyle Hamilton or maybe a safety later on in the draft for all we know. So in moving on from Logan Ryan, they also clear up cap space, like I said, for 2023 when they are going to potentially have to look at re-signing Daniel Jones, assuming Jones has a good year this year, or, Saquon Barkley if they want him back, or, whatever player they might want back. And also remember, they might want to extend Andrew Thomas for all rather than pick up the option year of Andrew Thomas's contract. Maybe, they're going to say if he has a good year, they're going to say, you know what, let's get the deal done now and lock him up and not have to worry about tying big money to this kid, 2 years down the line when we can better manage and control the salary cap figure for him. So that could also be a factor. Now, moving forward, what should we make of this? Well, like I said, this is a rebuild process for Joe Schoen. The Giants, for what it's worth, and I know nobody's going to want to hear this, but anybody who's expecting the Giants to do what Cincinnati did, where, they came back and they won a Super Bowl after going, I think they had 3 or 4 wins the previous year, something like that. Not quite the same situation. Cincinnati, for what it's worth, did have the same coaching staff. They pretty much had the same personnel. It wasn't a turnover like what the Giants are going through right now with a new GM, a new coaching staff, new players coming in and whatnot. So the Giants are basically, they've ripped up the sod, if you will, and they have replanted some new seeding that's got to take root and ultimately work to give the team a more competitive advantage, which they haven't had. So with that comes tough decisions like this. Again, Logan Ryan was well-liked, well-respected in the locker room, wasn't a horrible player by any stretch of the imagination. There were some reports, and of course I had heard this as well, that Logan Ryan wasn't a fit for what Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator, wanted to do. Whether you believe that or not, and I have no reason not to believe that. The point is now Logan Ryan, an ex-Giant, the Giants looking to rebuild this team in the image of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. So hence, here's the move. And, was it a surprise? Yes, because I didn't think they would do it this year. I thought they would wait till next year. But in looking at it, bottom line, this was more about rebuilding than it was about money. And isn't that refreshing to see that Joe Schoen isn't going to hang on to a guy who maybe isn't part of the plans just for the sake of, pride or trying to save face or anything like that. They're going to cut their losses, move on, and do what's best for the organization. And I like that approach. And I think it's the right approach to take. We'll see if it yields results or what kind of results it yields, I should say, over the next season or two. But I think right now, this being in March, you got to like what Joe Schoen has been doing in terms of free agency, in terms of some of the roster decisions he's made. So we'll see what the rest of the free agency period holds for us here at in the land of the Giants. We'll also see, of course, what the plan is for the draft. That picture should gain some clarity as we move forward. Make sure you keep it here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. We're going to have full episodes as well, but wanted to get this news brief out to you with my thoughts since it did break towards the end of my taping of Friday's show. So catch you on Friday's show with the special guest, Bobby Skinner of Talking Giants, in which we review everything the Giants have done so far in free agency.